Everybody. All right. Excellent. Oh, it's nice to see everybody from all over. Welcome to Mahamudra for the People. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here with everybody. If you are new to this group, we when I'm not traveling or having some kind of busyness, we go through the practice. We touch into Mahamudra practice on a weekly basis, often themed. And so last week was the first time that we're putting this back together after a good long while, actually, since I think August. And I started teaching from the third Karmapa's Mahamudra aspiration prayer. And we did the first 7 stanzas. And we'll continue today. And we'll intersperse some practice in between. And there's ample opportunity for people to ask questions if you have questions, and we can do that through raising your hand, if you want, either physically or the weird emoji hand, or you could put things in the text box. And yeah, I don't mind kind of answering questions in an extemporaneous fashion. So for now, though, let's take a little bit of time to sit. I don't think I have my audio. Let me see. I'll just check my audio settings to make sure I have the. Oh, good. Yeah, you'll be able to hear my fancy gong. So, as a practice for sitting, try and allow your body to relax in whatever way feels comfortable. You can be laying down, you can be seated, you can be in a chair, you can be in a cushion, whatever you like. Trying to allow your, if you're seated, for your back to be as straight as possible, as physically possible and comfortable. It's often said that the shoulders should be open like the wings of a vulture as it flies. Like your gaze, if you're practicing with your eyes open, can be angled down slightly or directly in front. Your hands can be on your knees or in meditation mudra in your lap. Right, and we'll use a kind of an approximation of Tilopa's 6 nails as the basis for this. So these are basically 6 points, and the first point is to let go of the past. Right, so in this moment, try to let go of anything that has occurred prior to this moment. Right, so let go of what happened this morning or yesterday or last week or last month or last year. The second point is to let go of the future. So the future has not happened yet. Try not to go down that rabbit hole of what comes next. And let go of the present, letting go of there needing to be any particular quality or point of definition around this moment. And then don't control. Right? Don't try to modulate anything. Right? Don't try to make anything happen. Then don't try to figure anything out. Everybody here is very brilliant. We can put down our brilliance right now. Just relax. But then the last instruction is to just do that, is to relax, to rest into this open, easeful experience. We'll do this for about 10 minutes. consider what that was like for you. And so the first 7 stanzas that third Karmapa or Rangjung Dorje delineated was kind of, he's basically kind of setting the stage, as it were, in an aspirational way for all great yogini and yogi practitioners like all of us, and anybody watching this in the future can begin to understand the practice of Mahamudra. And I'm going to just kind of overlap back to the 7th one, just to kind of refresh people that way. So this 7th stanza reads, and for those who are interested, I'm using a different translation than I usually do. This one is by Nalanda Bodhi Publications, called Songs and Instructions of the Karmapas. And so this was produced, I can't remember, it was like in the teens or something, 2006 rather. Yeah, so I think it corresponded to, I think, like the second trip that Karmapa made here. And it's nice because there's actually quite a bit of literature that isn't published in other places by many of the different Karmapas. So it's quite a nice resource. But so the 7th stanza reads, may the great purifying Vajra Yoga of Mahamudra clear away what is to be purified, the fleeting stains of confusion, and may we manifest the result of this purification, stainless Dharmakaya. Right? And so, what is the intention or the aspiration that he's setting is around this Vajra Yoga practice. So this kind of great immutable activity, right, is how we could translate Vajra Yoga of Mahamudra. So may this purify these accidental stains, or these temporary stains of confusion, right? Thought activity, conceptuality, discursiveness, whatever is arising, right? Obsession with self, and it doesn't have to be like, obsessed, like we have to be obsessed, but again, this point of orientation, self versus other, observed, observer, thought arises, emotion arises, everything that arises, and it's not really a big deal. It's not something we need to worry about. The practice of Mahamudra is really, allowing ourselves to rest into the clarity of awareness that recognizes this, right? And upon recognition, just allowing this to then shift into whatever next experience of that comes to be. And I'm not going to get too much into what is supposed to happen, because I don't want to lead people. This is really helpful to kind of distill the wisdom of your experience for yourself. And so the last line is, may we manifest the result of this purification, stainless Dharmakaya, right? So it's as if to say, the stainless Dharmakaya is the blueness of the sky, right? And any kind of, thought or emotion or concept or discursiveness or agitation or solidity that we bring to things are like the clouds. And sometimes, like a couple of days ago here in New York City, it was a sheet of gray, right? So it's like this, sometimes we have this experience of a sheet of the constancy of thought activity or discursiveness or whatever. But the one thing that we do know from experience is that it's never permanent, right? Eventually that breaks, right? Eventually the weather changes. And the same thing with our experience of mind. We can go from these heights of great intense focus and even experience of blissfulness or clarity, wonderful clarity, and then dullness might arise, right? And Dullness could lead to agitation. Agitation leads to excessive cogitation. Excessive cogitation leads to, fear of the future. And with all of this, it's important to recognize that the stainless Dharmakaya, the ground of all of this, is constantly pure, right? And so this practice of Mahamudra, very similar to the practice of Dzogchen, is about learning how to be able to let go of everything that temporarily obscures the experience of Dharmakaya, and doing so in a way where we're not exerting any effort. Right? So it's a really beautiful and simple and yet, interestingly sophisticated kind of practice in that way. Sophisticated, maybe, who knows? That might not be a good term. But basic in the sense that, we see this kind of recreated at various points in our lives. Sometimes when we have a sudden shock, like when we're startled by something. It's sometimes said that sneezing and other similar experiences are these moments where, all of a sudden there's this kind of, startling out of our thought activity, and then we're just left with the experience of clarity. Right? It's similar kinds of things. So moving on now to the fresh territory of stanza 8 and onwards, Rangjung Dorje continues by saying that eliminating superimpositions about the ground is confident view. Guarding non-distraction from that is meditation's essential point. Becoming expert in all types of meditation is conduct supreme. May we gain such confident view, meditation, and conduct. And so, this main point about eliminating superimpositions about the ground, right? Eliminating superimpositions or eliminating, needless ideas and concepts about the ground meaning the way things are, right? The way mind is. So within the view of Mahamudra, the mind is vast, right? It is spacious, right? It is spaciousness. It has no particular location. So I'm going to just out a couple people based on where they live. Like I see somebody lives in California, and somebody who lives in Boston, and somebody lives in Oregon, and somebody lives in Florida, right? Somebody lives in Maine, and somebody lives in the UK, somebody lives in Canada, right? Mind it has no location, right? So it is everywhere. It is accessible everywhere, right? It is vast. It is primordially pure, right? Nothing can stain it. All of the guilt in the world, all of the anxiety we may feel at any given time, all of our regrets can't stain the mind. Just as much as positive thought activity doesn't make the mind shine even more brilliantly. And so having a clear, sense of the view is important, right? And so this is, or clear, notion of the ground, right? And this is the view. And guarding non-distraction from that is meditation's essential point. So meditation just is resting into the experience of the view. The mind is vast, it's without location, it's brilliantly clear, it's lucid, it cannot be contained. And the practice of meditation is just resting directly into that. You don't have to worry so much about even form. And when you connect to the early Mahamudra teachings of a lot of the Indian Mahasiddhas, Saraha, Tulopa, Naropa, etc., Maitrepa in particular, Shavaripa, you can see that most of the way that they engaged practice was this way: open, free, not particularly process oriented, other than the process of just settling, right? Just resting. But the work of coming back to this and coming back to this and coming back to this and coming back to this. This is what meditation really is. Right? Meditation is just coming back to gaining confidence in the view through repeated points of contact. And so in this way, meditation is actually quite a simple thing. And we can get performance anxiety around so many different kinds of things, right? Like I gave this talk in Bhutan at this Vajrayana conference in the beginning of October or something, into September or something. And I was so nervous. It was so crazy. I feel like I wasn't making sense. I felt like, nobody could understand me. I was almost having a hard time understanding myself because I had so much anxiety about, performing for all of these people, who were to some extent, some just people I respect. And of course I did end up making sense, which was good, right? But the anxiety was there. And so with our meditation, the same thing. We might have such a vivid and alive connection to practice and such a strong desire for awakening. And that's wonderful, right? But if we can, try and let your practice just be natural, right? Like, Tilopa or Saraha, just sitting on the banks of the Ganges. Nothing to do. No big deal. It doesn't have to be a huge, huge thing. And then becoming expert in all types of meditation is supreme conduct, or conduct supreme. And so how do you become an expert? You just become an expert by showing up and doing. Right? This is not necessarily about mastery through reading a lot, or mastery through even hearing a lot of instruction. Like the best kind of mastery is just being with our own mind, being with our attachments, being with all the things that we have aversion towards, being patient with ourselves, patient with experience. There's no better way of cultivating patience than just sitting in the practice of Mahamudra. So all that comes is either our clarity or our dullness, our frustration, or our excitement, right? And whatever is coming, just let it be and keep going. Right? It's such a beautiful, beautiful practice. And then, this ends with this aspiration. May we gain such confident view, meditation, and conduct. Right? So we don't have to worry about, may I master every single technique? Right? May I master, all the practices associated with Mahamudra from the Sutra tradition? May I master, all the practices of Mahamudra from the Tantra tradition? Right? We don't need to do that, right? We just need to be committed to our own practice, committed to being with our experience of mind. That's the main thing. So now Karmapa leads us into this dive. He begins by saying, all phenomena are mind's magical play. As for mind, there is no mind. Mind is empty of essence. Empty and unimpeded, it can appear as absolutely anything. Analyzing excellently, may we cut through all superimpositions about the ground. And so here, the ground or the view is being pointed out. And so all phenomena. So take a moment and don't look at me. Look at somewhere in your room, the room where you are. And I'll kind of go through this slowly. All phenomena are mind's magical play. So what you're seeing right now, all that it is open, freshly liberated appearance. We can experience it vividly through color, through texture, Right? These things, like I'm looking at my shrine right now, are just things. They're colors. You can tell they have different texture. And we can just let them be without any particular concept, right? Removing the label water offering bowl or torma or brocade or incense or lampasange. And just let everything be free of label, right? Free of imputed meaning. In this way, everything that we experience is the same, including each one of us. When we look at the screen and we see these boxes, right? Maybe the little faces in the boxes are moving or smiling, right? But the labels, right? The attachment, the aversion, the assumption that somebody looks scary or somebody looks amazing or somebody's eating during this teaching. Whatever the meaning is, right? Just let that go, right? When we're able to just let everything go in this way, right? Then we begin to move into, this idea of like one taste, right? Everything is basically of the same nature. Right? So all phenomena are mind's magical play. As for mind, there is no mind. Mind is empty of essence. Right? So now take a moment. I take off my glasses so I can't see anything. And rest into the experience of your own mind. And wonder. Get a little curious as you settle into this. Where is the edge? Is your mind, where is it in relationship to the room that you're in? Is your mind occupied the exact same volume as the room you're in? Or is it smaller? Is it in your heart or your brain? Is it only there? If you open the window, will it run out? Get lost? Is it localized just to this time? Now, now, now. Or does it extend into the past and into the future? As the ground of all experience, how does it hold thought? Does thought stick to it? Does thought change to it? What about emotion? When you die, does your mind die? When you're born, is your mind born with you? And so these kinds of practices, we find, there's a very, very beautiful and quite encyclopedic description of this particular process, right? This practice is called, translated as special insight, or laktong is a Tibetan term. So we find in Ninth Karmapa's Ocean of Definitive Meaning, the Nidin Gyatso, this very kind of long and beautiful description of this particular practice of Vipassana style insight into just the nature of mind itself. Where is it? What does it look like? Can it be found? What is it like in relationship to time? And the thing about this, right, is like it helps if we can approach these kinds of aspects of practice like a gourmand, right? Like, may we never tire of the taste and the variety of all the tastes, all the flavors, all the experiences, right? The moment we say, aha, I know what it is, it's this one thing, well, good luck. It's many things, it's nothing, right? The mind does not exist the way we tend to assume it does. So really exhaust that, really savor it. Again, become an expert in this. But we don't become experts by even, unfortunately, reading the Neden Gyatso. We become experts by just being present and essentially a little curious about the experience of mind. And to really kind of slow down and savor this process. So Karmapa goes on to say, empty and unimpeded, it can appear as absolutely anything. Right? And we see this definitely in our dreams, right? All we're doing when we're dreaming is reacting to the play of mind, right? Sometimes the play of memory, play of emotion. Right? Who here had a daydream today? I suspect, right? Like, it's pretty normal. That just happens. Or a very vivid remembrance of something to do. It was so vivid that there was almost a visual component to it. Right? Yeah. Like, these things occur. And so in this way, every kind of appearance arises within the experience of mind. Mind arises as everything. So, and then the last line is analyzing excellently. May we cut through all superimpositions about the ground. Right? And so analyzing excellently does not mean necessarily being involved in an analytic process, but we analyze by looking, right? And how do we look? We look by knowing, right? Resting into awareness. Right? Just resting. One of my favorite pictures of Bokar Rinpoche, who's my main Mahamudra teacher, was taken. I unfortunately wasn't there. I was in India at the time, but I wasn't in Varanasi. He went to Varanasi. I stayed in Bodh Gaya, and this beautiful picture of him sitting under a tree on the Ganges. And I love it so much just because he was such a relaxed, calm presence, like this peaceful ocean. And when he would talk about, Mahamudra in particular, that's the way he would describe it. It's just this relaxed, easeful sitting. And this is the kind of analysis, quote unquote. I don't like that word at all in this context, but we're going to use it. The analysis of just knowing what love feels like, knowing what fear feels like, knowing what tenderness feels like, every single emotion that might arise. And experiencing and not holding tightly, just letting it be and letting it transition into whatever it comes next. And letting the clouds be clouds. I'm not trying to turn things into other things. And this is actually what differentiates Mahamudra from Tantra. Mahamudra exists within the context or the milieu of Tantric Buddhism. But the big difference between this and, say, Dzogchen is that one doesn't really get involved in transformation. You're just letting everything be as it is, without sticky fingers, right? Without touching, without poking, without provoking, without settling that which is uncomfortable. One thing that was, of course, terrible and inconvenient about having a teacher like Bokor Rinpoche was that when my root teacher, Ani Zongmo, died, I felt like I felt like my mother died, and his advice was just be with it. It's like, well, I want to do a transformation practice, Rinpoche. Like, let me transform my emotion. And he's like, no, 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 just be with it. And I'm like sobbing in the mess, and he's like, just be there, you know, and know that, right? That too is your mind, right? Your loss is your mind. Your fear of, what has happened in that relationship is your mind. What comes next is your mind. The wisdom that is distilled from this experience is your mind. Your interplay with her mind is your mind. The lack of separation between anyone's mind is our mind. The deathlessness of mind is our mind. And this is why, even though, we may, like, I love Rongjung Dorje. He's like a huge, I can't, I just, have a huge love for him. And when we really take Mahamudra at face value, then my mind is his mind. Your mind is his mind. There's no separation. It could never be. And then all of a sudden, like, I'm feeling it in my chest, then all of a sudden there's like no fear, right? There's nothing to worry about. Oh, he died when he died. And now here we are in 2022. We could feel like, oh, this is the tail end of, this world system. And, we're in this like crazy time of Kali Yuga. But all we need to do is rest into Mahamudra, and we are resting right into the same mind essence of Rongjung Dorje. The same mind essence of Sraha, or Naguma, or Yeshitsogyo. It's really, really, really profound. So maybe we'll do, let me check the time. Yeah, we'll do 2 more stanzas, and then we'll sit again, if that's okay with folks. And so the next stanza is our own projections, never existent, we mistake to be objects. So now here he's really breaking it down. So I'm going to repeat this. Our own projections, never existent, we mistake to be objects. Out of ignorance, we mistake self-awareness to be self. Clinging to this duality makes us wander in the vastness of existence. May we cut through ignorance and confusion at the root. Self and other. Our own projections, never existent, we make to be objects. I've said this before, so some people have heard this, and I apologize. But my root teacher was a nun who lived in Sikkim, and she died in 1997. And I was with her in 1995, and at one point she was teaching, and then she looked up, and then she was like, "Oh, Justin, like, you see me and you see a nun." And I'm like, "Yes." And I'm like, "Yes, you're a nun." And she's like, "I'm so much more than that, right? Your label of nun, label of even female, label of this, label of Sikkimese, label of that, all of the projections. I am infinitely vast, and like, I was 19 or something, or 20, something like that, 20, I think. I understood it as best I could, but I understand it now, definitely. And it's great because and there's another time actually we were walking to this place called Lal Bazaar, this kind of big market, um, where all the different farmers from all over the state would come, and craftspeople. And she turned to me at one point and she said, don't judge a single person. Like any one of these people or all of them could all be siddhas, right? Like you don't know, I don't know. But so every single person you see, if they're doing, let's say they're carrying, this freshly slaughtered meat to be sold, and the blood is dripping down onto their calves. Maybe that's a siddha, or maybe the woman who's selling cheese is a siddha, or maybe the kids trying to steal a piece of fruit are siddhas. Like all of this stuff, don't judge. So this piece in particular about our projections, right? Our projections almost become, it's like, meeting with Medusa or something. They become frozen into a solid reality. And that's often what we reduce the world to and people to. And, that these kind of bizarre projections become what we think are beauty or ugliness. Right? And so this whole exercise we just did of stop and look at the room around you or wherever you happen to be, and try to look with fresh eyes. No projections, no labels. Let color just happen. Let texture just happen. Let sound just happen. Right? Let all of these impulses or data that we're experiencing through all of our senses just happen without any preference, any need for anything to be a particular way. And so in one particular way, we could say that there's maybe a kind of neurological deprogramming that needs to happen in order to be really good at this. Or as we continue a practice like this, that is what's happening, right? We are ripping apart or taking apart or untying all of these habit projections we have about the world around us. And then, of course, about ourselves, right? So the next line, out of ignorance, we mistake self-awareness to be a self. So just come back to sitting, and it appears that everything revolves around this, area. And now I'm going to say this area was named Justin, and this area has qualities apparently, and the gravity that I might have around certain things seems to make this even more real, et cetera, et cetera. So before we know it, we have something very real over there, or many things that are real out there that have all these meanings that I've given, and I have a meaning too, and I have all sorts of stuff. And then what comes next? Clinging to this duality makes us wander in the vastness of existence. It's just this this big beef we have with everything, right? This arguing, this loving, this passion, this dispassion, right? All of the ups and downs, all of the drama, that's created between this and all of that. That's what causes us to wander around samsara. We have to look good for all of that, so then we need money so that we can get everything we need to look good. We need to feel good about all of that. We need to then, invest in all of this work to feel good about all of that. Right? But if you've had that, these experiences of clarity in your practice, sometimes we sit and all of that dissolves. Sometimes it dissolves simultaneously. Sometimes maybe it is as if one dissolves before the other. But the larger point is that when we're able to just dissolve into the fresh nowness or isness, of the similitude of both, the natural appearance of what's arising and the natural appearance that happens to be all of us, then all of that tension goes away, right? All of that wandering. Again, like I guess I need to find the exact passage, but there's this description of Saraha. I don't have the book right here, but Saraha, keeps saying, or I keep referencing this. You don't need to go to Lanka, like you don't need to go on pilgrimage to make this happen, right? You just need to settle into this, right? You don't need to go to Bodh Gaya. I don't need to go to Bhutan or anywhere, Sikkim, right? We don't need to go to. We do need to go to Atlanta for the next Boogie Sparsha retreat. I'll just say we do need to do that, but technically you don't need to. As a caveat, we should put a little asterisk, like at the bottom of the next retreat. Information saying that technically, according to Saraha, this is not necessary, but it feels good. Yeah, and so then the last line again of this stanza is this aspiration. May we cut through ignorance and confusion at their root, right? And what's nice too is that this causes us to be able to begin to reflect on, the cause of ignorance and confusion. So basic, right? It's like instantaneous. Like what happens? Yeah, I used to work with, before I worked like for New York City on Rikers Island, I volunteered for 3 years working with people in custody, and usually like the most violent people on Rikers Island. And we would work around the experience of anger. Someone got this idea that I should do that, and so what I would do is we would sit and meditate, and then we would kind of have these informal discussions about, what is your relationship to anger like? What does aggression do for you? All of this kind of stuff. And then we would, I tried to set the stage for people to be very curious about when anger would arise, right? And when the awareness of that, enough anger that would cause physical violence to happen, can you just notice that before anything happens, right? And what was quite meaningful in one kind of experimental housing unit, there were some of the participants in the program were able to tell me, like, when it was like a new experimental mixed gang housing area. So when everybody would be let out of their cells, there was Bloods and Crips and Latin Kings and Trinitarians, all this. And it was designed so that everybody was outnumbered, but everybody also wanted to fight. And it wasn't designed so that they wanted to fight. It was just, all of the kind of, gang beefs that existed outside that housing area, were going to likely play out in that housing area. And sometimes, they spun out of control and there was violence, but a number of times people came up to me in confidence and said, all right, just yesterday, there was an altercation either with a correction officer and I really wanted to hit him or, splash him with hot water or something, or, spit on him. But I didn't, because I actually recognized that and I didn't want the infraction, right? And I had the choice. And later I did this with correction officers in another jail facility, that like a maximum security facility that had a history of very brutal staff on people in custody violence. And there was one incident in particular where somebody had thrown feces at a correction officer, and all of these people ran to kind of go beat him up, basically. And I was able somehow to get the deputy warden to get these people in the chapel with me, and we did that. We just like, I was like, let's look at our minds, and they're like, man, like, screw you, like, you're crazy, like, I don't want to look at my mind. I want to go kick some ass. But we were able to do that, and we looked at the experience of emotion in that moment, right? When emotion arises, and of course thought arises too, right? There is a whole history of relationship to emotions that will then cause us to act, and so we were able to slow down and just rest directly into that, right? And it really cooled everything down. And then, I asked people, like, is any of this worth losing your job over? An emotion that comes like that. Do you want that? Like, how's, I don't know what people's, individual family lives are like, or economic situation, but because you feel anger, does that mean, you know, you want to lose your job, right? Or, depending on your reaction, go to prison yourself, right? Because that does happen. So anyway, all of this is to show that even in real time, in non, Tibetan, like perfect meditation circumstances, there is applicability to this. So may we cut through ignorance and confusion at their root, right? So may we cut through this reactivity, right? The way we have a thought and our foot is already out the door when that thought happens, or we have an emotion and we're already, doing something, as a result of that emotion. Right? And it's not that thought and emotion are bad at all, right? It's more the lack of conscious awareness is what, leads to a lot of problems. So if it's okay, maybe we can sit for a little bit of time, and I'm going to invite everybody to sit as naturally as you like, and let your breath settle, let your body settle. And allow yourself to let go of any kind of projections that never existed. Allow yourself in this moment to let go of any attachment to whoever you feel you may be. Let go of the play of your mind. Let go of the existence of your mind. You must sit like this for 10 minutes. So maybe I'll just read the 11th stanza, and then if there are questions or comments or anything anybody wants to say, we can do that, because this one is super nice. So Wangjung Dorje says, of the mind, it is not existent. Even the victorious ones do not see it. And so the Buddhists don't even see it. It is not non-existent. It is the basis of all samsara and nirvana. It is not the contradiction of being both. It is the middle way, path of union. May we realize mind's essential reality, free from extremes. So it is not existent. Even the victorious ones do not see it. Gurumpche, Naropa, Talopa, Marpa, Milarepa, Gempopa, etc. They weren't able to see it. It is not non-existent. It is the basis of all of samsara and nirvana. It is the basis of all of your samsara, and it is the basis of your nirvana. So it's not a nothing. It is not the contradiction of being both. How is that even possible? It is a middle way path of union. May we realize the mind's essential reality, free from extremes. That's good. So, does anyone have any questions or thoughts or complaints? Yes, yeah, Miss Aisha.
Yes, once more, this is a blessing. And I want to know the relationship to the body. There's a lot of talking about the mind, and I wanted to know particularly about the relationship to the body, particularly when that body's not acting right, in quotes.
Like you're talking about me getting old?
Exactly. But I'm there before you, but you coming this way. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, so it's interesting. The use of the term mind doesn't just always mean like this thing or whatever mind is supposed to be, because we don't know what it is. We can't experience it. We can't see it. We can experience it. We just can't see it. So that's everything that happens, right? So physical sensation, right? There's shame about body image, right? There's not feeling right, like waking up and just being like, I don't feel right today. Something feels off, or oh my God, I can see how this is just this is a downward proposition for the rest of my life. All of that. So it's not just like mind. I think it's interesting though, because you bring up a really great point. A lot of people read this and they're like, oh, it's just mind, screw my body, it doesn't matter. And it's not that, like, this is not an escapism from being embodied. I think this practice really pops when we feel fully, right? So when we're feeling fully, feeling our body, so physical body, emotional body, quote unquote, mental body, even though there might not necessarily be specific terms for those things, I would say bring all of that, right? Because this also helps us to be able to diffuse the intensity of a lot of those things, right? So like our bodies age, maybe we can't sit the same way, maybe it hurts getting up, maybe there are other things. And we have to admit that also, like, there's the physical sensation about that, but then there's a whole lot of idea construction, projection about, oh boy, there's that, or there's the frustration or the, the fighting of this. Like, well, I don't care. Like, I'm still gonna, show up the way I did when I was 19. even though I look ridiculous. So feeling freely, feeling freely, or feeling fully, is the key to this. And yeah, I agree. It's a little strange that it's not, mentioned in that way. And I mean, again, this was written in the time period that it was. So, like, I want to say, I'm not like grossly mistaken, 13th century or something like this, by a monk. So, so there was feeling, right? But it was a different kind of feeling. And it was a long time ago, in a cultural location, pretty different. Feeling feely. That's me today. Is that helpful, Miss Asia?
Yes,
Yeah.
that was helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Mashumi.
Thank you so much. It's wonderful to be meeting like this again.
Oh, thank you. I can hear you only slightly.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Yeah, no problem.
So my question, well, I have a couple of questions. One is, when the word mind is used, well, where is the place for the unconscious?
Mm-hmm.
Is it, when we use the word mind, does the author, recognize that there's so much of mind that's not conscious that we don't have access to? So that's my first question, and I'll just pause there.
Okay. Yeah. No, thank you. And thank you for the pause. That's really helpful. So this is a great question. So we can say on one level, that it's totally reasonable to assert that the understanding of mind, that was had at that time may be different, especially than what we find in psychology now. With respect, though, to the unconscious mind, when we so with this particular stanza, our own projections, never existent, we mistake to be objects. Much of this is actually unconscious, right? Or happening even on a subconscious level, right? The projections we have about hardness. Like I keep a stone here. Every so often I squeeze it just to see, oh, am I going to be able to, leave a handprint here? This might sound crazy, but like I do that. Or like, stick my like Vajra into it. So this, while there isn't the term, unconscious mind, or even maybe necessarily even the concept of subconscious, I think in a certain way that's implied a little bit by the very nature of the fact that we take everything to be so solid. Yeah. So out of ignorance, we mistake self-awareness to be a self, right? So I guess what I would argue is that with all of these, our own projections, never existent, we mistake to be objects. Out of ignorance, we mistake self-awareness to be self. Clinging to this duality makes us wander in the vastness of existence. While there's not, an exact delineation of the fact that this also occurs on the subconscious or unconscious level, I think that we can say that it does, because we see this happening with respect to not just like physical phenomena, but then of course when we start to look at things like unconscious bias and things like this, where the patterning around how we may be raised, or the patterning around a family culture or a societal culture, imprints onto people, with respect to their perception and unconscious or subconscious thinking, thereby, causing, and I mean, it becomes really fascinating, because then we can, even go so far as to say that, maybe there's like a collective karma aspect of some of this, right? Because there is a mass, or en masse, to some extent, acculturation around seeing things a particular way, in terms of perceived subject, or perceived object. It's a good question. The next time I have the opportunity to ask somebody, more in depth about it, I will. But my point here, though, is that I think that we can read the subconscious mind directly into this too, and so using though this other line, may the great purifying Vajrayoga of Mahamudra clear away what is to be purified, the fleeting stains of confusion, and may we manifest the result of this purification, stainless Dharmakaya, that even the unconscious biases or the unconscious mind and the assumptions it has around things being a particular way, even that is fleeting and temporary as well. Is that helpful? Or
Yeah, I think so. I guess the way I'm holding that is that there is an aspect of mystery to this, and that if you surrender to the space, and that not just conscious kleshas may be purified, but there may be unconscious cleansing happening as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
The second point I had, and this is more of an intellectual maybe, that line, out of ignorance, self-awareness is taken to be self, or is mistaken as self. So I'm a student of Western psychoanalysis right now. So just there was a certain psychoanalyst named Lacan. He was more of a philosopher. He postulated that infants are born without differentiation, and it's when they recognize themselves in the mirror that suddenly they realize there's an I there, and that's kind of the beginning of the split. And so I'm wondering if in that passage he makes a differentiation between self-awareness and self, that we mistake self-awareness for self. I'm wondering if that's if what he's pointing to is similar to what this philosopher Lacan pointed.
Yeah. I read some Lacan in college. Yes, I think it is very similar, while I might not be the best dad, I've seen this with my kids, right? Like it is as if, and I think this is true, like, all beings are born, they have their kind of like initial qualities, right? And something does happen with this kind of split that begins to occur with this recognition of myself as a quote unquote recipient of things, and then a world out there. I think this is I think there's a parallelism in this that is harmonious, right? And I guess what's also interesting is then this work to reclaim direct, fresh, non-patterned relationship to external phenomenon, and then even whatever this happens to be, right? So that there is a way, and Mahamudra, so that's what this text is about, and Dzogchen is very similar. Both of these systems offer us a way to kind of return back to, I like to actually say return back to the Garden of Eden, like, right, to return back to this original state, right, whatever that is. And so sometimes you'll see language like returning to one's original face, or returning to the basic state, right? So this is returning to the freshness of there not being, the intense drama, not in this, dramatic way, but story way, right? Like the story of that and this. So no, I think that's very cool. You should write about it.
I love parallels.
Yeah, cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, any other questions or thoughts? Or feedback for customer service. Gotta slip a joke in to make everyone feel comfortable. Yeah, so again, if you want to, pick up this copy, you can. There's the Nalanda Translation Committee has a pretty good. I mean, I think it's very good actually. Copy that you can get online. There's like a free PDF if you go to Nalanda Translation Committee and then just look up Mahamudra Aspiration Prayer. It's so profound. It is so profound. I was first taught this, in 1995 by my root teacher, and then by Bokar Rinpoche, and then by Pating Rinpoche, and multiple times a year I teach from this because it's again, I mentioned in last week's class that Wangjing Dorje and Longchenpa were contemporaries, and both of them have this shared ability to write so beautifully and clearly about the nature of mind. There's something really magical about that time period. And I do want to, thank you, Eric, for bringing this up, that next Tuesday I will not be here. But then for the foreseeable future, every Tuesday I will be. So 27th onwards, we'll be here. So, and oh yes, Nalanda Translation Committee. Yeah. So whoops, that's not spelled correctly. Thank you, Larry. Thank you very much. Great. Well, maybe we'll pause here for today. And before we do, though, let's dedicate the merit, dedicating the merit to all beings who are caught, and maybe including ourselves when we get caught in this subject-object split. May all beings be able to enter into the experience of Mahamudra and thereby massage away all stress, anxiety, drama, separation, subject-object split. May all beings begin to recognize that the nature of awakening is really in their own heart. May all beings be able to recognize that their own mind is the play of awakening. May all beings recognize the natural arising empowerment or self-empowerment that Mahamudra is, causing all of us to be able to be cosmic Buddhas now and at all times in the future. So I want to thank you all so much for your practice, for your showing up today and participating, and I will see you all on the 27th. So take very good care.